What is up, people? We are back with Down the Middle podcast. I'm Ryan.
My name's Nomal.
And we're talking infrastructure today. So it seems like when politicians get into office, infrastructure is like the big thing that everyone's got to put infrastructure first. It's one of the big bills they got to pass.
Yeah, but when it comes to infrastructure, they have to talk about their own specific goals. So, for example, Republicans will talk about like infrastructure, like roads and buildings and like, spending money on that stuff. And then there's like the Democratic side, which we'll be getting to, of course, with like the human infrastructure part of it, of society as well.
And this is a new thing. We have the differentiation between physical infrastructure, which is how we've interpreted it kind of forever. How infrastructure is literally the structure inside of your society,
right? Physical structure.
And then human infrastructure, which is like how people are, the stuff that builds up a human.
I don't know. The thing that I've been noticing throughout our generation, like in recent times, is that we just change the definition of words to suit a certain agenda. So we'll just change a different word, like, no, this means this now, and then it just starts becoming a wave. And if enough people catch on, it'll start meaning that definition.
Webster is turning in his grave. His work has been completely nullified.
Completely irrelevant to the words we have today.
So that's a big thing to mention, though, because you need to realize that you look at these terms, human infrastructure, and then you try to correlate it to physical infrastructure and realize, wait a second, those things are not the same at all. Exactly. So let's get into what has just went down in this past couple of days. So you had Joe Biden said he wanted to pass a $1.8 trillion infrastructure package.
Yeah. It started off what, like maybe a few months ago, right? When we first found that number, 1.8 trillion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and we actually talked about it when it first came out. We're like, bro, that's ridiculous.
It's way too much. And only 9% went to roads and bridges.
Yeah. I remember that. And then now Biden's, I think around a month ago is when he started taking the course and started saying, hey, listen, I want to get something passed and I want to work with Republicans. Mm-hmm. And we should actually acknowledge in past couple of our videos.
And that was a great thing that he did. It was the different side. The right side said it was because he lost momentum. Mm-hmm. But obviously, I come on here, I try to give him the benefit of the doubt as a moderate as he ran. Maybe he went and watched his old clips from a couple years ago and he said, hey, I'm a moderate. Wow, let me get some Republican support on this. And he did it.
He did.
So, this physical infrastructure bill for $570 billion?
Yeah, around... No, is it billion? Yeah,
billion.
It's billion. Yeah. So it's around like 600 billion. Like, I'll just round it off. Mm-hmm. But it's like around 579 billion.
Yeah, and I have the numbers on what it goes to. We have 300 billion for transportation, 100 billion for roads and bridges, 66 for railroads, 49 for public transit, 25 for airports, 33 for electric infrastructure, 65 for broadband, and 55 for water and sewers. Those are all
is that billions. The picture I sent you?
Yes, that's the exact one you sent me. Yep. So this is the bill that he passed, and on its face, that sounds great. Now, personally, I don't know, because I've only seen New York, and looking at New York, yeah, we could use some freaking infrastructure. Whether they're going to spend it on the right stuff, we were just in Brooklyn last night, and I was talking to my girl. I was like, they're going to spend this much on infrastructure, nothing's going to change. I was getting pissed.
These potholes are screwing our cars.
The roads are this wide.
Badly. This wide. And then the potholes are on each side, so you can't dodge it at all.
So, I mean, hey, $570 billion for physical infrastructure sounds good to me. But in terms of other places in the country, I'm not sure if we even need this package, but I'm glad to see the bipartisan support. I'm glad to see it.
I mean, and we might be a little biased, obviously, from what we're talking about with the infrastructure. Mm-hmm. But I think, in general, it's about time. It's about time we started really building up the infrastructure. And it's actually, if it gets passed, it will be the biggest infrastructure bill that's been passed.
And, it kind of... One thing it reminds me of is that TikTok comment we got where he said, we don't need to compromise. We're in power now. We can do whatever we want. So, like, what the Republicans have to kind of settle with here is that, okay, the Democrats won. They're going to spend a lot of money. So now on the Republican side, we need to compromise too. It's not like we're going to get lower taxes. We're going to get a closed border. Gas prices are going to go down. that stuff out of the picture. We're going to spend more. So now let's figure out how we're going to spend that. Let's come to the table and they did win. And when you win, you're allotted certain things. So, absolutely. And what the Democrats win, they spend more. So this is a good thing because this is a bill we can come together about.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting from our filibuster video as well. Like, we talked about how the Democrats have done a lot of things to maintain power and also gain power. Mm-hmm. But it's also, like, a fresh breath of air to see Biden also saying, hey, you know what? I want a bipartisan bill. I want it to be passed with the approval of Republicans as well.
It's really great that he did that because... Not expected.
Not expected
and
at all.
Maybe not expected justifiably so. Because shortly after, he says that the asterisk on the bottom of the bill says this bill will only pass if you pass the human infrastructure bill too. So, and now the Democrats are saying, well, that was the deal the whole time. The Republicans are saying, what? We didn't agree to this.
Yeah.
And now we're at this weird place that you say is actually no longer relevant.
Right. So right before Saturday, he was quoted saying, if the bill is being sent to me, without the human infrastructure bill, I'm not signing anything. I won't have to. And he was more like a threatening, like a veto type of thing, type of scenario. But yeah, so this past Saturday, actually yesterday, so today's Sunday. So yesterday, he said, actually, he turned back those words. So he's like, actually, no, I'll stick to my word and actually go ahead with this bill, and it'll be completely separate. It won't be connected to two bills. So we'll start off with the infrastructure bill, and then afterwards we'll go into talks about the human infrastructure
Which
bill.
is the right way to do it. And this guy, we should call him Bipolar Biden, because he goes back and
He has
forth.
a lot of nicknames.
Russia goes back and forth, and now on this, one day he's back on his Batman stuff. I'm not going to sign it. And now the next day he's, well, yeah, I'll sign it. And it makes sense, because physical infrastructure is so different from human infrastructure. And honestly, reading the human infrastructure stuff, I will hear it out.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it's the craziest stuff in the world. Obviously, with these packages that the liberals are passing, you have to look at the hidden stuff and where that money's actually go. One of the things that we'll talk about in the next video about guns is that he's saying now $350 billion of that COVID money, it's just sitting around. You can use that to help crime. So, we need to see, you talk about $1.8 trillion. We have to make sure the money's going in the right places. But I'll hear that argument for why we need human infrastructure, but it doesn't need to be with this bill.
And just a note on the human infrastructure, I just have some notes about that on what it's on. So Democratic spending bill on childcare, climate change, Medicare expansion, and other progressive priorities. And then also support raising corporate tax to 25% and increasing capital gains tax to 28% to help pay for the bill.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the basis of, what a typical Democratic or liberal bill would be.
Yeah, and that corporate tax number is a good sign, like we said before about compromise, because it was 28, and then they kind of fought it back down to 25.
Exactly.
28 was going to be the highest in the world,
right?
Which is just horrible for competitiveness on the global stage.
Right.
The capital gains tax, I strongly disagree with that one. You're not going to get a positive argument for me for a high capital gains tax, but we lost. And then there's some other stuff that's in there too. We're talking paid family leave, which is a good system. We can hear an argument about a good number for guaranteed paid family leave in America, because we're one of the only countries that doesn't offer that.
Yeah, and I think there should be a change about that.
Yeah, we can hear numbers about that. Right now the number was 45. No. I don't have a number, but I say 4K per month was around the estimate, which seems like it's too much. But we can compromise on that. And you have $9 billion to go to American teachers, which that's one that I don't really like. I do believe, I always was an advocate that teachers should get paid more. I think they have they play an integral part in our society. But all the stuff that's been happening now with what schools are going away from teaching skills and teaching necessities. Like you sent me a thing where we should be taught taxes and house buying and all this stuff and politics and real neutral politics. And what they're teaching now, I don't think teachers should get paid more if that's the curriculum.
Yeah, I have my own opinions about the schooling system in America. I have a lot of problems with the school system in America.
Yeah.
Let alone the fact that with the new age of teaching now, with the the biased agenda. But yeah, and I'll just leave it at that. We'll probably make another video.
Yeah, and just not to mention, it doesn't even work, the schooling system. You see the gaps in literacy rates and mathematic rates and proficiency. It doesn't even work. So I
guess in short and plain terms, I think it's more of a system to keep that quota of people that are unable to move up in society. Yeah. So that's why they don't teach things like taxes or like home ownership and stuff like that, or just life skills that are really useful. And then just keep it, because like I said, an uneducated society is easier to control by the masses.
And that's rooted from Karl Marx. It's the conflict theory that you need that division. So, whoa, a bit of Marxism. And now here's one that I really didn't like in that bill, because that stuff sounds good. Paid family leave. You have free community college, and that's a good idea too. To give some people who need it some free college experience, let them go into the world after that. Great stuff. $45 billion for critical nutrition assistance.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Critical nutrition assistance.
Obviously, when these bills are in their prelim stage, you don't know all the detail. Even when they're passing, you don't know all the details. Yeah. But this is what it says, so I don't know what that means. I've never heard of that before. Of course, critical is in it, critical race theory, all this stuff. So it's critical. It's important. And then nutrition assistance. If we're talking we should decrease the obesity rates in America, I agree. I think that's a good system. But I highly, highly, highly doubt that's what the Democrats are pushing for. So I don't know what that means. And that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to just have all those things and have a lower number of what you're funding it towards, and then another just a 45 billion to critical nutrition assistance.
Never heard of it before.
I don't know. It's like I said, it's another. Politicians are really good with having vague headlines and just putting those in. It's Yeah, and just letting us guess what it actually is. And also just to note that we've also talked about this where people just focus on the headlines, and then next thing you know, we're sending billions of dollars to other countries that have no affiliation with us.
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So
like COVID relief sent dollars to other places in the world for stuff that you don't even know about.
Yeah, right. If it's U.S. COVID relief, I don't know why we're relieving everybody else, right? So that's just another thing to go with these bills. Like, we'll read off the headlines, but we really don't know to detail like what's going to happen until it really passes.
And just the last one that he's going to sneak into this one: tax cuts for low and middle income, which is obviously one of the top Democrat priorities. And then the tax hike is going to try to be snuck into this one too for human infrastructure, 39.6% for the highest earning individuals. And now one thing that we've been confused about, because he's been back and forth about, in the legislation for this bill, it says not a tax increase for households under 400K, not individuals. So household under 400K won't see that tax increase.
So we talked about this because the discrepancy was between 400K with one person,
and he said both multiple times. So obviously this came from ABC News. We never got to see the actual bill to see what he actually writes, because those couple words mean a hell of a lot. Yeah,
two different things.
But that one is going to be the thing that he faces the most backlash about. Republican disapproval is that almost 40% tax for the highest earning individuals. That's a lot of money. But he said he's going to pass physical, so we're going to have some new spending.
Yeah. I mean, well, let me just take it one part. So, the infrastructure bill, it looks good. It's just that same thing with my concerns with the Democratic bill with the human infrastructure. The fine lines is really what the fine lines really what make the bill. At the end of the day, it's not the headlines ever. But I like how both of them are sounding, except the critical nutrition assistance.
Yeah.
I would like more details about that, but so far so good. I commend Biden for actually, going back on his role. He didn't have to even go that way in the first place. He could have just stuck with his words from the beginning, and just said, "Hey, let's get this done and move on to the next." But hey, it's still progress.
And that's not something that happens with just Democrats, that fine line thing. That's all politicians who pass legislation. There's always that stuff in between they try to sneak in. That's why these bills are 800 pages long. Yeah, I mean, we have our notes for the bill. We have everything included in it, yet we wrote a page of notes. These bills are 800 pages long, so you know that there's stuff in there that they're trying to sneak through. And yeah, it was great of him we spoke about that, because I got asked a question recently that I raised to you and that I raised to other people. Can you name something that Biden has done right that you like? And it's a tough question, because I'm always trying to, as a conservative, always trying to say, all right, this is what we have. Let's make the most out of it. Let's see what Biden can do. And he makes it very hard. But the willingness to compromise was the biggest thing. It was my favorite thing that he did.
I also agree.
He did it, and then he went back on it for like 3 hours, and then he came out of, I don't know. I think that there's two Joe Bidens. There's like a really angry one, and there's like the moderate one that comes out of the basement like every once in a while.
It's like the one that whispers and the one that doesn't whisper.
Yeah. 1.9 trillion. I gave him the money.
It's so weird. He starts whispering every other press conference.
He does stuff like that, and I'm just like, benefit of the doubt. Come on. Yeah. He's got a sore throat.
But hey, I mean, if this is any indication of how he's going to approach problems and bills and Republicans moving forward, I mean, I think it's a good step in the right way.
Yeah, and just, I mean, closing, I have a question for you. Do you think that those Brooklyn roads are going to get better? Because I was in Florida recently. I go to Florida sometimes.
Staten Island too. Staten Island, Brooklyn, everywhere. Manhattan is horrible.
Staten Island's the best of it. Isn't that crazy?
And it's
my driveway has a pothole.
Literally, like it's just so bad. Like, I don't understand, especially the way, especially in Manhattan. I'm cool with driving Manhattan. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm really cool with driving Manhattan because it gets crazy. It's crazy, and then let alone the fact that it's crazy driving there is potholes. So you got to dodge other cars plus the potholes.
Yeah,
like the margin for error is really small.
Dodgeball.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. But I hope we're counted into that bill.
Yeah, so I'm down the middle recap. Good stuff. Let's just see where it goes. And we're going to have a little bit increase in that deficit. Hopefully it pans out correctly.
Yeah.
So,
said what I had to say too.
We'll be back soon. We're going to talk guns, all right? We'll see you guys later. Peace out.